Welcome back to the Name Redacted Podcast, America's most beloved podcast, the most downloaded Red Sox podcast in the world. Tyler's here, Jake's here. I would say it's been an eventful few days since the last time that we did an episode. I don't know that like a ton, and some good things happen, some weird things happen, some bad things happen. We're going to talk about all of it. I don't know if specifically where you would like to start, Tyler. I feel like we have to start with the Carlos Correa stuff because I feel like people are going to tune in just for that. Like, should we start there?
Yeah, I saw some people kind of complaining or sending their shots on there. So you didn't report anything. I didn't just put out a video.
So here's the thing. It's a gift and a curse. I appreciate that when I say something, people pay close attention to it, but that one was outrageous. Like, people were just putting words in my mouth that I did not say. And I actually did clarify to someone. Someone was like, does this mean that he's signed with the Red Sox or he's close to signing with the Red Sox? And I specifically said no.
And you backed it up in the subreddit. Like, if you scroll through the subreddit, I saw you in there kind of clear it up as well. I don't know. I think you were just showing, you weren't saying, oh, Carlos Correa is on the finish line of signing this deal with the Red Sox. It's like,
no. I was saying something was happening. Something was, and
I heard a connection.
Yeah, it was that, and also, all right. So I'll just break it down. The night that I tweeted the video of Carlos Correa taking batting practice at Fenway Park, so I was told that the Mets pulled the offer. That's the night that I was told that the Mets pulled the offer,
which was confirmed.
Yes. Yes. Later that was confirmed. So that was the night that I was told, hey, the Mets pulled the offer. So now in my head, I'm thinking, go get Carlos Correa. So now I'm like that was half me saying like, hey, like, you know, there's a chance that the Red Sox could get Carlos Correa because the Mets are pulling the offer. And then what I later found out was that the Red Sox called.
And Jared, anyone who wants to say, oh, well, whatever, Heimblum confirmed this in the Trevor Story presser as well, that there was contact. But continue.
Yes. So I know that, you know, when I read text messages, people are like, well, it doesn't fucking matter now, blah, 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 blah. But I asked specifically, and I said, did the Red Sox call on Carlos Correa? Just to check, nothing serious. So it was never anything where it was close or they were talking numbers or they were trying to get creative with an offer or anything. So when I tweeted out the video, I'm under the impression of I have the information of the Mets pulled their offer. So now he's out there. If you would have asked me, because I said on the sweat, I went on with Emerson, I forget which, Monday. And he asked me, like, you know, what's the deal with Carlos Correa? And I was like, I hear it's not going well. And then he said, well, where's the most likely scenario if it doesn't go well? And I was like, the Twins. I didn't say, pay it, you know, hone in on the Red Sox. But I was told that they pulled the offer. And then I was kind of asking around to other writers with far better sources than me. Because I don't have Met sources. I know people who have Met sources. So I get told that the deal gets pulled. So before I'm not going to tweet, hey, fucking the Mets pull. I'm not going to like say that publicly. But I'm asking around to other writers, hey, have you heard anything on this? Like, why hasn't anything come out on this? Like, have you heard this? Other writers had heard the same thing, but it was almost like one, and why I followed up the batting practice video by saying there's a lot of shenanigans afoot here, and the opinions are on opposite sides of the spectrum, because one side was saying the offer was pulled, and then I had people saying the offer has not been pulled, but it's basically on life support. I was like, okay, so we're not going to go, like, if we had done a podcast that night, I don't think I would have said the Mets pulled the offer because there was some discrepancy in how people felt about it at the time. What night was that? Do you remember? Was that like last
I think that
Saturday?
No, I think it was after that. In terms of the night where everything played out and then we find out that Correa signed with the Twins the next day.
No, I'm saying, like, what night was the batting practice video?
Oh, yeah, that was over the weekend for sure.
It was either Friday or Saturday. So all in that night, because people are like, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? Like, what's going on in the scoop shop? And I'm like, I can't say I heard the Mets pull the offer. And then after doing some more digging, that some people heard the rumor that they had pulled the offer, but were told that it was not pulled and that it was just on life support. you know, hindsight's 2020. Now we are well aware Carlos Correa is a Minnesota Twin. He, you know, it ultimately was true. Whether or not it was pulled that night doesn't really matter, I don't think, because at the very least, we were told that it was on life support, and clearly that was true if he ended up signing with the Twins. Then you hear the rumors about, well, the Red Sox might be in contact with the Correa camp. Now I'm getting excited. But still, if you were to ask me, where do you see him landing if the Mets deal falls through, I would have said the Twins, which I did say, again, on the sweat with Emerson. I still said the Twins, and that was before he ended up signing with the Twins. So I guess, like, was that fucked up of me to, because people got really excited after I tweeted that out, but people jumped to conclusions. There was like, I wasn't. That was my way of saying, like, hey, something's happening here.
There's a little bit of smoke. That's the way I took it. There's just a little bit of smoke. And I think,
and there was.
That's it. And Heimblum told you, he made the call. You know, there was some contact. We talked about it on the show about how they were going to do it. We never believed they were going to hand him out a 10 or 13 year contract. If that was the case, they would have been involved earlier. The reality is we were hoping for that, you know, miracle 3 or 4 year deal that he'd have to settle because everyone hated the physicals. But ultimately, a team like the Twins, who's desperate, who knows they're not going to land stars, it worked out and he got to go back. Heim told you, yeah, we were in contact. Like, I don't know what it is. I think we're in a spot right now with just Red Sox fans where there's so much desperation. Like, everyone's sitting here, we're looking for something to be positive about. We're hoping that, you know, an offseason that's basically telling you, you know, they're not going to compete for a World Series this year, or most likely the year after that. It's probably closer to 2025 once all these prospects come up. It's a hard pill to swallow. And Carlos Correa was that last, like, you know, that last hope, that last thing you could grab on and say, all right, if, you know, Bogarts is gone and we get Correa, it's like everything kind of figured itself out on that front. It was their last hope. And ultimately, you know, it didn't happen. There was really nothing ever there because you know why? The Red Sox made their bed. After Bogarts left, we know, and we've talked about it, they've laid out the path they're going forward here, and they talked about it with the presser yesterday. This is it. I just think fans are they were looking for something to cling to. The Scoop Shop is known for having things. It's just anyone who's followed you, I think when you start to react the way people are reacting, it's a Jared dream. It's not a Jared video.
Right. Like, if I thought that it was close or I thought it was going to happen, I would have said I had a dream that the Red Sox signed Carlos Correa. So I'm in a weird fucking spot. And let me explain the spot that I'm in. People love to tell me shit, but they love to preface it by saying, this can't go anywhere. But I'm going to tell you this really juicy info. And it's almost like I would rather, like, you want to know so that you can be prepared for what might happen. But when you have the information, it's like you can't share it. I can allude to it, but then that gets you in trouble, right? Like with the Xander Bogaerts thing. It's like that day, he signed with the Padres that night, but that day, all the Red Sox people felt pretty fucking good about ending up with Xander Bogaerts when it was all said and done. So all that's coming back to me, and then I tweet, oh, I feel pretty good about this. And then people take that, and they're like, Carrabis reported that it was a done deal. Like, no. he reported that the ink was dry, and he signed. Like, no, I didn't. I just said I felt good about it. So it's almost like I think the listeners of this podcast know, because at least if I were a fan that didn't hear from people like this, I would want to know what like the little rumors are, like as things are happening. So I try to let people know, like, as things are happening, but that doesn't ultimately mean that things are done, that things are guaranteed to happen. But because I think it's fun, like in a way, like, yeah, I would like to know that the Mets deal is falling apart. The Red Sox made a phone call. Like that's interesting to me, that at least like there's a blip on the radar versus radio silence. Which one would you rather have? But so I'm kind of stuck in between where it's like the people that will tell me these little news bits, I'm not a reporter, so I'm not going to report them. I can't pretend to not know. Like if I just came on and knew that information and we had to do a podcast that night, I just have to like become an actor and pretend like I don't know these things. But then if you share them, then you also have to be under the impression like this could change. This person could be wrong. Like that shit happens. It's such a fucking terrible place to be. Like I would almost rather just not know. Like if someone like texts me and is like, hey, you know, like because like the other thing too, because people were coming after my credibility. And I was like, dude, who broke the Corey Kluber signing? Not that that was
Seriously.
a fucking major thing, but like that was me. So I don't want to, like, I fucking hate, I like it. It's not something that helps. It definitely, I don't want to say it hurts either, but it is very frustrating when you'll hear things change. Some things might be true. Some things may not be true. Like the payoff of being right does not outweigh things changing or being wrong about things. So I'd almost just rather like not know anything at all and just be on the side of the fence where I'm just a fan and I'm following the Chad Jennings and the Jeff Passons of the world like everybody else.
I think where you are is someone, like you said, who's in this position where you remember being in the same spot as all these fans. Even someone like me, like I'm not getting anything unless you're putting it in the scoop shop. That's reality, I think, for everyone in that group chat. And just for people to know, the people in that group chat, we weren't sitting there like, Correa's a Red Sox. Like that was not what was put in there by any means. It was the smallest smoke you could imagine. But it was just
call.
Like, that's it. It was like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean?
Oh, they checked in.
Yeah. It's not like the Corey Kluber signing, which you had, a night before and told us, hey, this is what it is. And we find out the next morning it was done or announced, I should say, or reported. I think what you try to do is put yourself in the shoes of those fans that don't have those sources in. Hey, we're all hanging in the scoop shop. But if you can put something out and it can be taken one way, but hey, come up to the windows of the scoop shop. Just look at what's being made in here a little bit. That's what you're kind of offering these people. Like, check out, we're scooping in here. We are making some ice cream. Now, do you know what's in the ingredients? No, you don't really know what we're making it for either, but take a look in. It's nice in here. There's something going on during a time where, before the Trevor Story stuff and everything that happened, the Devers extension, following up on that, in terms of what's going on in the free agent market and signings, it was something to talk about and something to look at.
Yeah. In a perfect world, right? That night that I tweeted the batting practice video, I would have loved to have been able to tweet, I'm hearing that the Mets pulled their offer. I asked around, and now I'm hearing that their offer was not pulled, but instead it's actually on life support. And because of that, the Red Sox made a phone call just to check in. Like that, if I just tweet that, then people are like, oh, interesting. Because it's not promising Carlos Correa to the Boston Red Sox, which is how people took that video. But I can't tweet that because now it's like people are going to be like, well, what the fuck? Like, who, you don't have sources and this and that. And you're it's false promises. I'm like, no. Like, so I would rather just not know. Like, I would rather just not know.
And Jared, I won't say, or I'll say it because you won't. The people in the scoop shop know who that source was. And when I tell you, it is not a conversation about who this source is. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't say who it is, but it's not a conversation whether it was from some bullshit spot or something like that. Not in the slightest. And I just don't know what more than you need than Heim to confirm it himself. Like, the question was asked outright. Did you guys reach out to Carlos Correa when you found out the Mets deal was falling through? Yes, we were in contact.
And that's all I basically was trying to get out there.
That's all that was in the scoop shop. That's all that was there. But I think like and it's a different Twitter world than there was a couple years ago. Now it's like,
oh, I hate it now.
The smallest thing people will run with. It gets posted on Twitter accounts. And listen, I don't want to act like I'm some holy figure. I'm someone who tweets out the news and different stuff like that. But you kind of got to be careful and realize when it's just Twitter. It's a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when people are panicking and freaking out about the Red Sox, it was the perfect storm for people to kind of have a meltdown over it.
Yeah. I mean, and it was a meltdown. Like, people were furious with me.
I can't imagine what your DMs looked like. Mine were crazy. And all I did was respond to your tweet.
That's it. People were fucking texting me, fucking tweets, DMs. They were hitting me up on Instagram, even though like everything was going down on Twitter. And like, what's going on in the scoop shop? But like, if people ask what's going on in the scoop shop, those are listeners of the podcast. Those are good people. But then there are just people on Twitter that are just so angry and ready to pounce, and they want you to be wrong just so that they can attack. It's crazy. Like, they would rather it be wrong to attack instead of being right or something coming from it and ending up with Carlos Correa in a way. It's fucking bizarre.
It's just commitment to narratives. Like there's certain people with a narrative they're trying to push. And I don't know. I feel like you said, it's kind of been building since the Xander Bogaerts thing a little bit, where people are trying to like, oh, where are your sources? Where are your sources? What more do you need? Like you said, the Kluber thing, Bloom confirms. Yeah, we contacted Carlos Correa, which was
that's all it was.
That's it.
That's all it was.
I don't.
Is that not an appropriate? Like if you were to hear that the Mets pulled the offer and that the Red Sox were making a phone call just to see what's up, like that wouldn't excite you?
Of course.
Okay.
Especially a majority of this fan base, whether you're on the Bloom side or not, all the Bloom guys love Carlos Correa as well. You know, they were the ones pushing for Carlos Correa a year ago. I was one of them. Like that's one of the few guys I think both sides of the Red Sox fan spectrum were in on. It's just people are on the edge of their seats right now. It's a fragile time in Red Sox Nation. And I think
people are on edge.
That's it. During fragile times, smoke can turn into a bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where we're at. Like it just oh man. I will tell you this. I have looked at my mentions with a far less frequency than perhaps ever because of just how not fun it is to be involved in any discussions surrounding this team these days because you can't win.
No.
I will get it from both angles where if I'm positive, I'm a ball washer, I'm a team mascot, and then if I'm negative, I'm a Felger wannabe and all this stuff. Like there's no happy medium unless you're just so vanilla that you don't even have an opinion on anything. That's where we're at.
That's the hard spot to live in because I get it both ways. I was Red Sox fanboy for all of 2021, all of 2022. Then when we started criticizing them on the podcast, it's like, you guys are like the sports hub. You guys are just sitting here shitting on everybody negative. Like you guys aren't real fans. You don't see it. It's like, no, like that's not it at all. Listen, we are fans. And I think in 2021, there were people bitching every single day and that team went to the ALCS. Every single day calling that team frauds. They were garbage. Like crapping on Bloom, every narrative imaginable. Then in 2022, I think we were more on the positive side, but we were also realistic, especially once we got to the middle of the year. It's just, you can't have it. No matter what side you land on or whatever opinion you're going to have, there's certain people who think you're just selling narratives or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind because I do feel like it's some of the younger Twitter side. And it hurts me to say that because those people are closer to my generation and Jake's generation. There's some of the analytic people that I really like. But seemingly, they're also some of the ones that don't get your history and your track record of stuff over the years. And I think that's where it's like you've crossed over to multiple generations now. It's not just the generation that you built on. Now you have the generation of younger people that also are questioning whether your sources are real. When, come on, man, please, please, can we grow up?
Read up. It's crazy. I don't know how you feel about this. Because obviously because you're 10 years younger than me, but I don't think there's ever been more of a divide amongst the fan base than right now. Like I feel like the fan base is not all on the same page right now, which is very strange. Like usually Red Sox fans are sound of mind, like they're more logically thinking, more reasonable. I would like to give Red Sox fans credit for having one of the best sense of humors and being able to roll with the punches. The panic in the streets right now, I get it with some of the things that have happened over the last, call it 3-4 years. There's a lot of what Chaim Bloom said in the press conference about, there's, thanks for hanging with us. There's been some ups and some downs, but, we were this Rafi Devers extension. We feel like we're on the right path to winning a championship and having sustained success and all that. You can agree with that or disagree with that, but because of the downs, and I think because of, in a way, the promise that came along with the Chaim Bloom hiring and is it too strong to say the failure to deliver that has come with that?
I think the ups and downs, and there's been a failure. There's nothing you can say about 2022. It's a year you pushed over the luxury tax. When you push over the luxury tax, you're a championship caliber team. That's what you're saying to the rest of the league. You finished in last place in your division. Now, 78 wins. Is it fluky? Yeah, a little bit to be last. You're closer to a third place team. But that's it. It's the divide between, I think, the older crowd, and I get a lot of that because I'm in radio. Like, I get the older guys who call in and are like, this nerd doesn't get it. They're ruining baseball. And you have the older generation and some of the old school fans who are just like, Chaim Bloom, me, someone on radio who uses a lot of analytics. We're the issue with the sport. So you're getting a combination of, completely different baseball philosophies where the old school fans think they're being called stupid and falling out of the sport. And they also are seeing the Red Sox and saying, well, look, you've ruined the Red Sox. In 2021, it went away in the playoffs. It's the one time the last couple of years you haven't had to hear any of it. But now that we're back a year after it failed, the flames are higher than ever. And it's personal to a lot of these people that are on the old school side. And I get it. I'm someone who I'll always tell you, being all the way to left of analytics isn't the right place to be. And being all the right to the old school way isn't the place to be. You should be somewhere in the middle. That's where the Andrew Friedmans of the world, the Alex Anthopoulos who Anthopoulos was great recently on a podcast, a Braves podcast talking about the importance of leadership and clubhouse stuff. Like, you need to be somewhere in the middle. But I think that's where the anger is. It's saying, the old school fans don't want to hear the nerds, and I'm someone who maybe I've aggravated the flames at times, but I've made fun of some old school kind of theories and looks on things. I get it. It's just where the difference is when the Red Sox suck, there are certain parts of that nerd crew who are almost saying nothing's gone wrong and that everything's been part of the plan. And then the other side saying everything's gone wrong. No, it's somewhere in the middle. And there's just not a lot of people in the middle right now. There's few. And I feel like the smarter minds on Twitter, like the bigger accounts, are the people who are there. And, even some of the smaller, but the outrage spam comments saying, fire Chaim, fuck this nerd, you ruined baseball. Like, unfortunately, that ends up being a majority of the people. It's the casual kind of perspective of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember a few years ago or a couple of years ago when KFC, Kevin Clancy, big Mets guy, he was describing the Mets fan base, and he called them the Lindorks, just the fans that hated Lindor and blah, blah, blah. And there was like a divide within the Mets fan base. And as he's describing this to me, like how, he hears from Mets fans that are super negative, and then there's Mets fans that are super positive. I was like, that's just not Red Sox fans. Like, I feel like Red Sox fans, for the most part, up until very recently, were a united front. And now you're kind of seeing, like, I don't know if you guys have seen, I think it was The Fog. It was a Stephen King movie. And to sum it up, I guess the comparison, like, they're all trapped in this grocery store because the fog outside and people are dying in the fog, and everyone is trapped in this grocery store. And they start off as like this united front. And then the more that the storm is like killing people off and things are getting worse, then you see these kind of like sub tribes breaking off, and like one is super radicalized and one is super violent. And then there's like the pacifists, and then there are people that are trying to figure it out. Like, those are the smart people. And then there's, that's what's happened like to the Red Sox fan base. Like, the Mookie Betts trade was the beginning of the fog. Everyone was like, all right, this fucking sucks, but like, we're going to get through this. And then it just, 2020 happens. You're like, fuck, this sucks. 2021 happens. You're like, oh, okay, a small victory. And then 2022 happens. And now there's just fucking these subcultures of Red Sox fans where they want blood, they want murder, they want death. And they're trying to take over as like, we're the leaders of this fan base. And there is just a great divide, unlike anything that I've ever seen with Red Sox fans. But the one thing, there's only one way to unify the fan base and shut everyone up, and that's winning. That's the only way. Like, there's not going to be a trade. There's not going to be a free agent signing. There's not going to be a 10-game winning streak. It is going to be getting to the playoffs, performing well, obviously ultimately winning a championship. But to your point earlier, the 2021 postseason, the Red Sox didn't win a championship. They came within 2 games of making it to the World Series, but I feel like a lot of fans walked away from that season feeling like we accomplished something this year. Like where this is a huge step in the right direction, but then it was all undone the following season. Injuries, you can, whatever other reasons, poor roster construction that you want to blame 2022 on. It was a failure and it was a huge step backwards. So yeah, like I think it's very simple, but it's not simple at the same time. Putting together a World Series championship team is very difficult to do, but that is the solution here, is if you win, people will shut the fuck up and everyone will be on the same page, because what will there be to complain about when the Red Sox are a first place team or in contention for a World Series title? But again, like that just does not appear to be in the immediate future.
And I think that's the biggest difference. Like when you talk about last time it felt like this, or, you know, there was this kind of step back and realization like, oh crap, we kind of need a big offseason to get everything to where it needs to be. Money was spent. It was, you know, Pablo and Hanley. And listen, those moves, we know what they were, but we didn't get those kind of moves exactly this offseason. You got Yoshida, who, you know, money-wise, you're starting to get in the right ballpark, but at the same time, Yoshida's someone that none of us have ever seen. And we're talking about an analytics darling. So you're getting even those old school fans more angry, and it's more of a reason for them to complain when they're like, you know, you're paying these guys who, you know, we've seen all the analytics and there's a lot. I'm excited for Yoshida, but the older school fan base is like, you know, I'm going to put this guy in the same category as Shogo Akiyama, you know, all these different players that haven't worked out in recent memory. It's just, like you said, there's a really big divide. And what I enjoyed so much about the 2021 postseason, it felt like everyone was united. It was like the first time feeling that really since the Mookie Betts trade, the Dombrowski firing, I think was a really big thing for a lot of people. Not as big as some people like to pretend, who, you know, hail Dave Dombrowski. There weren't a lot of people hailing Dave Dombrowski when he got fired. I think that's something they've rewritten at that time, because he had isolated himself in that front office. It was not talking to anybody at that point. But, you know, let's pretend like that didn't happen anymore. Like it was all, you know, Andrew Kashner at the trade deadline. We were having a blast. There were some things that went very wrong towards the end of that. Is there an argument he should have got more time? Sure. But that's, and you know, the Mookie Betts extension not happening beforehand, all these different things. It's just, I think Red Sox fans are extremely sensitive right now because they realize, oh crap, it's going to be a couple years before this team is probably where they need to be. And going into 2021, when everything went, it was accelerated. It was like, yes, like we're not going to have a rebuild. Now it's like, yeah, you're probably going to have a 2-year bridge here.
Yeah. I had a crazy thought the other day, and I wanted to bring it up on the podcast because it is a crazy thought. It is. And I'm probably going to sound really dumb for bringing it up. But before we do that, we got to talk about Blue Moon. Trades, free agency, roster cuts. Baseball season feels so far away, but excitement is already building. Blue Moon gives you a dose of ballpark nostalgia without even being at the park. In fact, Blue Moon was born in a ballpark at the Sandlot Brewery in Denver, Colorado. Its bold flavor, bright explosion of color, and iconic orange slice ritual guarantees a one-of-a-kind beer experience. One of a kind beer experience year round. Pretty much the only thing in my fridge right now, after just moving in, is water and Blue Moon. And there's probably more Blue Moon than water. It's a great point by you, Tyler. From its refreshing flavor with Valencia orange peel for a subtle sweetness and hints of coriander, Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale is a one-of-a-kind beer that's made brighter. It's carefully crafted, full-flavored, with refreshing notes and a smooth, creamy finish. Why strike out with the same old beer when you can get something that's one of a kind? Best served with a signature orange garnish to showcase its beautiful hazy color. A beer this good only comes around once in a blue moon, but you can enjoy it all off-season long. Make winter weather feel like spring training. Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale is a one-of-a-kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/Jared to see your delivery options. That is get.bluemoonbeer.com/Jared. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado Ale. Okay, so here's the crazy thought that I had. And I'm probably going to end up disagreeing with myself in the long run, but it's just a thought. And I'd love to get Jake's opinion on this as well. So when things like this happen, we go back to Dave Dombrowski getting fired and 2019 being a disappointment after, let's face it, they brought back essentially almost the entire 2018 World Series championship team that won 108 games. And that team was a huge disappointment in 2019. 2020 was a fake season, at least for the Red Sox. I'm not trying to discount the Dodgers World Series title.
When people bring up 2020, it's like, I'm sorry, but do you forget? And I know COVID was going on, but like you lost Eduardo Rodriguez, Chris Sale, like the ace of your team went down with Tommy John. No disrespect to Raffy. I love him. Alex Cora had to call him out publicly for his weight. Like these are real things. JD just took the year off.
Benny? Benny took the year off.
Yeah, seriously, he got hurt.
People forget he was even on the team still.
There was so much that season was over before it began. People don't want to act like it, but it was. And there was not a person after that year ended that said Chaim Bloom's fault was on that roster. Was, all right, we're kind of paying the penalties of going over for 2 years and pushing everything in. That's what the situation was.
Yeah. 2020, like, again, I'm not going to discount the Dodgers World Series title, but I am throwing it out from any type of Red Sox evaluation.
Ron Renicky was your manager and he sat Alex Verdugo on opening day.
Yeah, that was wild.
Think about that for a second. The main piece you got back from Mookie Betts, Ron Renicky said, enjoy the bench today. We're going to treat you like a platoon bat. He was the best player on that team that year, and he finished, 12th in MVP voting.
Mm-hmm.
Just a reminder.
Xander leaves, Nate leaves, JD leaves, all that, right? And Red Sox fans right now, some are optimistic, some are like, okay, I see the vision. And a lot of them are like, what the fuck's going on? Miserable. And these seasons, especially a season like last year, a season like 2019, you don't always have to make the playoffs. You don't always have to win the World Series. It would be nice to just feel like you're in it, you know? And a lot of these seasons are, like you said, are over before they even start. That's fucking miserable.
Awful.
I would say, I would even go as far as to use the word unacceptable with this payroll and the resources that you have. So when we're pissing and moaning about these things, and obviously fans that baseball fans that aren't Red Sox fans will follow me on Twitter, which is great. They'll chime in and be like, dude, you won 4 World Series titles. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you complaining about? You guys have won 4 World Series titles. And it's a completely valid point. It's completely valid. The Red Sox have won more World Series titles than any other franchise in the sport since they won in 2004. That's a fact. But sometimes, and hear me out, I'm just throwing it out there. Sometimes I almost just wish that we had something more like what the Dodgers have going on, which is, and maybe it's because I've seen the 4 World Series titles. Obviously, the goal is to win the World Series. Obviously, sitting through the tough times makes winning a World Series that much more enjoyable. I've always said that. I will sit through and watch every single game of a last place season. I'm crazy enough to do that. It's fine. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are that crazy as well. But the season is 6 months. Postseason's 1 month. So when you have these years where it's like last place, championship, last place, third place, last place, championship. So it's like it's been like that where, yeah, you've won these championships, but in between the championships has been just a lot of dreadful, not fun, toxic, unwatchable, uninspired baseball. It kind of, in a way, like the Dodgers, it's like it's fun all year. All year they have fun. And then it's like you get to the playoffs and we'll see what happens. And they have that 1 World Series title, which, it's people will say it's a Mickey Mouse ring. I don't feel that way because my logic behind that is everyone else had the same advantage of only playing 60 games and their players being healthier than they would have been otherwise. And if you go back and look at the playoff bracket, the Dodgers went through every team that they would have gone through otherwise. I think the title's legitimate. But it's almost like I don't know if I would say much rather, but like it's so tempting to be like, wouldn't you rather choose fun for 6 months and we'll see what happens in that 7th rather than misery for 7 year over year and then have like a pop-up World Series title? Like championship years, beyond fun, beyond exciting, fucking awesome. Memories for a lifetime I'll have from all 4 of those World Series titles. But it's kind of like getting blue balls. Like when you win that first World Series title, not even the first. Let's just use 2018 for example. 2018, that team was a fucking wagon. They were coming off that was 3 straight division titles, 16, 17, and 18. So, I mean, they got dusted in 16 in Cleveland. They win 1 game and get bounced in the first round in 17. And then they finally get over the hump in 18 and win the whole thing. So you think, JD Martinez was that missing piece in the lineup. Now we go and you take off. And I'm not saying dynasty, but it's like now we have a team that is going to be contending for a championship for many years to come. 19 sucked, 20 sucked, 21 was fun, 22 sucked. And now 23 might suck, 24 might suck. So it's like, if you're the Dodgers, it's like, yeah, we're going to win 111 fucking games. Maybe we'll lose in the first round, and that will suck. But what sucks more? Is it having like I don't even want to call it fluky because credit to the Padres in that series. But I don't know. I just wish that there were more regular seasons that we could enjoy than what we've gotten, where it's like it's fucking over in April or May, and to be in the position now where I think a lot of people are, would agree, doesn't look good. Like it's fucking January 12th, and the sentiment is, all right, what about 24? They haven't played
That's
a game
depressing.
yet.
It is
super
so
depressing.
It is. And like, I think there are some things like, listen, there was similar conversation about 2013. And then you have something that was so amazing. But what you're asking for is sustainability, Jared. That's what you're asking for. You want it to be like it was during the Theo Epstein years, where it's like, hey, we know we're not going to win every year, but every year we're going to be, near the top. We're going to be one of the better teams in baseball. We know once you get to the playoffs, anything can friggin' happen. You're going to have years where it clicks and years where it doesn't. Whatever. But you want to go into each season saying, hey, we got a shot. Like, this could be our year. Red Sox fans are sitting here and they're saying, this ain't our year. Maybe next year ain't our year. But that's where I think some of the anger, and we've talked about it on this podcast, when Chaim Bloom got hired, it was to be like the Dodgers, the exact team you just brought up, that could sit there and be a contender. And you knew, even if you had to get under the luxury tax one year, you had a farm system that was going to support you. Now, after 2021, we all saw it. We're like, oh, all right, like this is it. We somehow, in the year where we weren't supposed to be really anything special, Bloom was able to put together a roster with an old engine from Dombrowski and get us to where we need to go. The farm system was improving. Nick York, was looking amazing. All these different things. Marcel Meyer joined the system. It was like, all right, we're on the way. And then 2022, there were so many botched failures. And it really, the main one is the Xander Bogaerts situation. Because I think if they got that extension done, we're not where we are today. Because we knew when it came to Xander Bogaerts, the Red Sox wanted to pay him this offseason. That was their plan. They were at 6-160 and willing to go 7-190 or get into that ballpark. And it took one team that went nuts. Now, if you had taken care of Xander Bogaerts in spring training, the Red Sox are going over the luxury tax. If the Red Sox signed Xander Bogaerts this offseason, they're going over the luxury tax. Nate Eovaldi got his 3-year deal here. If Xander Bogaerts signed here, Nate Eovaldi's still here because they're not taking away their 3-year offer. They took away that 3-year offer when Bogaerts left, and it became, oh crap. We just went back a year or two here. We are no longer a team that's going to be able to compete star-wise with some of these other clubs. And that's why we saw them. They weren't really in the market seriously for anybody else that was going to push them over. Alex Spear had a great piece today talking about how Justin Turner's deal, they structured it knowing they were going to get under the luxury tax. That was after Bogaerts. Rafael Devers' extension with the arbitration this year and deferrals to make it 17.5. Like, it's so they knew they had a little more money to spend before they got to the luxury tax this year. Ever since Bogaerts left, that's when it became pretty certain this was the direction we're going to go. And that's a costly mistake. It is a bad mistake because it cost Chaim Bloom sustainability. Last year with 78 wins, you didn't fall off, the earth, but you took a step back. You could have been right back at it. Now we're looking at it and it's like, you're going to be in bridge years. This is a bridge year. Say what you want. There was a lot of people, Chris Gasper, who called last year a bridge year. When you stay over the luxury tax, it is not a bridge year. That's not a bridge year. No matter how you want to put it. That in the baseball view of things, that's poor roster construction, bad injury luck that really sunk your season. Tom Werner or whoever said it, I think it was Bloom maybe. When Trevor Story went down, The Red Sox were a playoff team. And then it exactly cratered. Or Heim, yeah. So there you go. Those are the things there. It was some bad luck. It was plenty of mistakes, mismanagement. They have come out since and said, yeah, we fucked up the luxury tax. We fucked up these things. Some of the roster building. The mistake's done. There's no going back from it. I think the only thing you can take away here is they paid Rafael Devers, and finally, there's a plan. And that's what Chaim Bloom's sentiment to fans was. I get that they're done with it. I can't blame fans for being mad. We got a similar kind of thing at the end of year presser where it was like, all right, like Chaim spoke to us directly. We're good. And then, they got shit on with Xander Bogaerts and we're like, fuck, we have to change everything up. Well, now they've committed to Devers. Devers was very serious about asking. Chad Jennings and Jen McCaffrey mentioned this in their piece about the direction of the club and where they were going. Well, we see it now. They're going to bridge here. They're bringing in a different clubhouse to kind of get some of these guys, bringing in Justin Turner. They're going to bring along the Tristan Casas's, the Brian Bayos. If they don't make a big trade, depending on how things play out, but let's call it the Brian Matas of the world, the Brandon Walters in AAA, then the next generation of Marcelo Meyer and Nick York, they hope come 2024 and 2023, all these names are in the mix at that point. Yep. And that's what they're hoping for sustainability. That our next core, our next wave, we're going to get pieces the next couple of years that tease you and get us, we'll be around a 500 team, but we're not going to be a championship caliber team most likely until the next big free agent class, which is not next year. It's the year after. But anything could change that. Maybe some things break the right way this year. It just seems like waiting for Marcelo Meyer to step into that spot. It's not going to be till the end of 2024.
If that. I mean, Lou Merloni was making that point on Twitter. And it's a great point about you had Xander Bogaerts came up when he was 20 or 21, but the way that he phrased it was Xander Bogaerts didn't become the Xander Bogaerts that we all know until he was 25. So it's like, yeah, he got here, but how long until he's the guy that you hope that he would become? And then in some cases, it's never guaranteed. Maybe he does. I go back to a Devin Marrero when, he was a first round guy and he never became a true big league ball player. He's bounced around in a bunch of different organizations, but he was a first rounder. Nothing not like the top prospect like a Marcelo Meyer, but it is. I see what you're saying with like Alex. Did you read Alex Spear's book that came out in 2018 or 19?
Yeah, Homegrown.
Yes. So like it talks about how the Red Sox front office and they keep talking about who's going to be or how are we going to get to the next great Red Sox team? How are we going to develop that next core? And you can see the pieces that they hope will become the next great Red Sox team. There's no way to know if they struck gold with Xander, Mookie, Benny, Jackie, all being really good players all at the same time. It doesn't always work like that. Like you're not always going to get a core that becomes not just big. Just getting to the big leagues is a big deal. But getting to the big leagues, and some of these guys were all-stars, MVPs in the league. You're not always going to get that. Despite where you rank in the prospect rankings and what all the hype is after you get drafted and you make your way up the minor league ranks, none of this is guaranteed, which is not me saying like there's no hope, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's saying Chaim Bloom's got to be Chaim Bloom. And what I mean by that is where's the fucking guy that turned Chris Archer into Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow? Where's that fucking guy? And if you ask Chaim about that right now, I think that he would tell you that in recent years, the trade market has become infinitely more difficult to win a trade or to just absolutely undress a team in a trade. And that's a fair stance. That's a fair way to look at it.
It's because of those deals they made back then that teams have become the way they are now. There's a reason why when we mention Chris Archer, everyone's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like that trade comes to mind. There's a fear. Teams want guys. They don't want the low, single A tickets anymore. Teams aren't interested in that. They want near big league or just getting into the big league talent. Guys that they can kind of say, all right, we see how this is going to translate. We don't want your, 19-year-old shortstop in the low minors who is hitting everything and looking great, because there's a fair chance by the time he's 22, he's either just a regular guy or someone who his body changed in a way we didn't really know. Like, there's so many variables with a lot of that stuff. And I think that's where the Red Sox are saying, like, damn, some of our best chips are in the lower minors right now to make trades. And maybe they don't exactly fit with a lot of clubs. So we're in the business of Tanner Houck and some of these other parts, which are good, but it's tough when teams are like, well, yeah, Tanner Houck's nice, but you're really shopping in like the Brian Bayo section. And the Red Sox can't afford to give up someone like Brian Bayo.
Yeah. Have you fallen out of the what if? Are you still there with me or no?
What do you mean?
For 2023.
Yeah, listen, I think anyone who's saying the year's done, like, fuck this season, you couldn't be more miserable. We've seen it before. That's one of the great things about baseball. Sometimes a hot month or whatever it may be can completely change an outlook for you. Sometimes it's vibes. Like, I'm an analytical guy. Having a better vibe. Last year was so miserable. Like, no matter what you want to say with the team and the ups and downs, that clubhouse was miserable. And was part of it? Was it part of it because of the front office? 100%. Hold accountable.
Xander Bogaerts.
That's it.
It was not leader. Getting that deal done in spring training, knowing that was going to loom over the fucking clubhouse the entire season. And to their credit, they made sure that didn't happen with Rafael Devers. They probably recognized, like, hey, the vibes were off all year, and it was definitely because, or not entirely, but mostly because Xander Bogaerts was, I don't want to say a shell of himself, because he still had a fucking outstanding statistical season, but I'm saying a shell of himself personality-wise.
Listen, this was a guy who went from always being, the de facto guy after the game, willing to talk in the clubhouse. Like, I still remember the shock. I can't remember in the middle of the summer, there was a game where it was like, yeah, Xander Bogaerts wasn't available. And everyone was like, huh? Xander? And we find out, like, yeah, he had to get away. Devers had to take him out to bars, and they would go and just get away from baseball just to breathe for a night. That's what it was. And you got to the point where people were so unhappy with the trade deadline and all that. Like, the Kevin Plawecki situation, looking back, and you think about that, like, the fact that caused a major disruption in the clubhouse, like, that's a bad place to be. That is a bad place to be. And I wrote an article, 985thesportshub.com, not to plug myself. And I said, the dark cloud over the Red Sox is gone. A lot of people took me as saying the Red Sox are going to be great in 2023. No, but the dark cloud that surrounded 2022 with not paying your superstars and everything, it is gone now. You paid Rafael Devers. You're going to have Justin Turner and Kike, who, shout out to Kike Hernandez, man. When Xander Bogaerts departed and all this stuff, and, go get your bag, do what you got to do. He has stepped up, not only in the community, but being there for events, on Twitter, defending against garbage reports from Bob Nightingale, like, all of it. He is being the guy. He's been recruiting. We know he played a key part with Justin Turner. I'm guessing he made some calls to Kenley as well, another former teammate. Like, props to him for stepping up. It's clear they're trying to set a different vibe this year. It's going to be about having fun. It's going to be some veterans mixed in with some young guys. And, it's one of those things. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think some of the stuff we even talked about a year ago, like, where it wasn't the best environment for some of the younger guys, where maybe some of them didn't feel super comfortable, where the veterans weren't exactly happy. I think maybe it'll be a little bit more of an easier environment for some of these guys this year to come into and try to figure it out. It's just, it's going to be a shakeup. It's going to be a change. But man, the roster isn't even finished yet. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, if they win 85, 86 games and they get eliminated from the playoffs the final week of the season, that would be 10 times more fun than anything we saw last year. And especially if it's a team that's happy, like a team that's pulling for each other. They may not be the best every night and they may lose some tough games, but we've seen ball clubs before where it's like, this wasn't their year, but maybe next year that team's going to be like the Orioles this past year. I don't think the Red Sox are in the same spot of them exactly, but nobody who watched the Orioles last year would say that wasn't fun. They'd be like, that was a fun team. That was a likable team.
I had fun.
The 2022 Red Sox, no matter what you say, they weren't likable. And that's partially because of the front office and what they created. At least 2023, there's a chance for this team to be fun and likable again.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I think Kike getting his buddies over here, like, Kike's a fun guy. Justin Turner's a fun guy. And from what I understand, the conversations that the Red Sox had with Justin Turner prior to him signing here, he knows his role. His role is to play baseball on a baseball team, but Justin Turner, before signing that contract, understands that part of his role here is to change the vibes. It's to be a leader. It's to loosen things up. It's to be one of those glue guys. And I think that he's going to embrace that. I mean, he has embraced that. I think that just, linking back up with some of his former teammates, us being the East Coast Dodgers now, I think that it definitely helps. It cannot hurt to have character guys like that who can also help you out from a baseball perspective as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm not super pumped about the season, but I'm at least in a let's see where it goes. And I'll bring back a point that I said a couple episodes ago. The month of April is going to be super crucial. Like, if the Red Sox, at least, I'm only asking for a winning record. I'm not asking for, a 750 winning percentage. Just give me above 500 at the end of April. And I think most fans will take that and say, okay, like, we can work with this. We can see where this goes. I don't think it's make or break. If they're like 2 or 3 games over 500, it's something to work with. If this team has a 300 winning percentage at the end of April, it's going to be chaos in the streets. It's going to be, here we go again, another shit season, another wasted year, blah, blah, blah. At least with this year, like last year, it was like, if the Red Sox suck at the trade deadline, Vasquez, Nate, JD, Xander, like all these guys are potential trade candidates. It's not going to be like by the trade deadline, if this team is disappointing, they're going to blow it up. Like, what is there to blow up, really? I mean, like, there might be some like interesting pieces that you could look to move, but a lot of those would be like off-season moves, not sell off rental pieces. Like, there's just not those guys on this team anymore.
It's not about breaking down anymore. It's about building up. Like, that's the path forward. Even when we're talking, Heim said the other day, we want a young, controllable starter. Like, that's one of the things we're targeting right now. Okay. Like, that stuff to me that says, yeah, obviously you're not trying to win a World Series this year, but maybe in 2024 or 2025, we're saying Garrett Whitlock, Brian Bayo, and I'm sorry I had to say Garrett Whitlock there, Jared, but Edward Cabrera are like our trio. Like, this is our trio of legit rotation filth. And that's not including, who knows what happens with Mata or Walter or Luis Perales or all these different parts here. But that's the stuff we can kind of sit and say, all right, we see it. And there was a portion this offseason where none of us could see the vision because Devers wasn't paid. Devers got paid. You can see it now. Now, does that mean you have to be happy about it? No way. If you're angry, be angry, because they should have been competing this year if they handled the Bogart situation right. But for me, going from a time where I thought, I don't know what's the future of this organization, to at least get it, that's something. Like, and I can appreciate a team that has fun. Like, last year just was so hard. Like, I remember coming on here some nights and it was just like, man, like, there was just nothing exciting. Like, it was just like, you can tell these guys, especially, let me say, until about, when Trevor Story got hurt and all the bad luck happened and then the trade deadline. After that, it was like, what is there to feel good about? You were kind of just waiting time. You knew nothing was really being played for anything but to finish the season. For 2023, when you're watching Tristan Casas and Brian Bayo and Rafi and, these other guys come up, it's like, all right, this is what we're trying to do. Garrett Whitlock, transition. It's okay. This is what we're going to be excited about. This is the very beginnings of the next great Red Sox team, hopefully.
AKA 2014. Do you remember that year?
Yes. That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. 2014 was a last place season, but you saw basically the first full year of Jackie Bradley. You saw the call up of Mookie Betts. You saw the first full year of Xander Bogaerts, albeit out of position. So you saw these pieces coming together. The next year, you got the call up of Andrew Benintendi. So
Eddie factored in during that stretch as well. Like Eddie getting into the rotation.
They traded for Eddie.
Andrew Miller.
Yep. So, I mean, but at least, like, I don't know. I mean, I would hope that the Red Sox have enough to at least make it interesting next year. But as far as comps go, I could see some 2014 there where that was a last place season. I think it was more tolerable because it was coming off a championship, and Red Sox fans are smart baseball fans. I think if you just start to see an influx of young talent that the fan base is excited to just watch play baseball, the wins and losses don't matter as much when it's not throwing up the white flag and throwing out, like in 2020 when they had a bunch of shit bums out there that were not real big leagues baseball players. But if you're losing, but you're losing by trying to get the next great Red Sox team's feet wet, it's a different vibe. And I think that there have been periods of time in the Red Sox timeline here where their top prospects, it was just a bunch of bullshit. Where it's like, yeah, we have a top 5 set of prospects here because someone has to be 1 through 5.
Darwin's and Hernandez, Michael Chavis, like, not to be mean, but
yeah, it's like, someone has to be number 1, 2, and 3, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be shit in the long run. I feel differently about these players, like especially a guy like Marcelo Meyer, Tristan Casas, a guy that I think can be a star in this league for multiple reasons. So yeah, I don't know. I choose to be somewhere in the middle where that's why I keep going back to what if. It's not me being negative and saying this is going to be a waste of a year. It's not me being a honk and saying the Red Sox are going to contend this year, but I can't really form an opinion on this team until I see them play baseball. And you also have to mix in the fact that the roster construction is not done. We've still got time to add pieces via trade or free agency. I tweeted the other day, I've talked myself into Elvis Andrus. I think that you have to do something there. Whether it's I don't want Jose Iglesias at shortstop.
What?
No, okay. I don't want him at shortstop. I think if you were to bring him in here, it's to play second base, and you can figure it out with Kike at short, mix in some Christian Arroyo. But if you do go out and get a Jose Iglesias, that's your second baseman, not your shortstop. Elvis Andrus can still play shortstop, so that's why he was a 3-win player last year. I would be more than happy with Elvis Andrus at shortstop as a stopgap guy, and then. You have, was it Haim or Cora that was talking about Jarren Duran being like the starting center fielder?
All right. Cora didn't say that. He said, I know it's been a couple years since we viewed Jarren in this light, but he's someone I hope that, with some at-bats maybe could play his way into a role on this team this year. Which,
correct me if I'm wrong, did Cora manage Duran in like a winter league somewhere?
He went down and met with him.
Okay.
When he was down on the Puerto Rico Winter League a couple years back, when Duran was kind of like skyrocketing after the ATS, and was like, he had a great meeting with him. Apparently it kind of hit off. They had breakfast together. But Cora had a lot of eyes down there when Jarren was there. A lot of his guys looking out for him, And I think, listen, and I am not super high on Jarren Duran at this point, even though we did see a month, right? This past year, there was a month where it was like, oh crap, Jarren Duran's arrived. Doesn't the equation change a little bit now? Like, you're not a World Series contender anymore. If we're being honest, if we're, trying to look at this the right way, is there more reason to have someone like that maybe have a chance at a role? Yeah, I think it's a conversation if you can't find the right trade for him or whatever. Like, what are you going to lose out of getting him to play a bit? Now, do I think he's going to serve a big role? Probably not. I'm with you on the Iglesias thing. Like, there's the narrative that he's still this like incredible fielder. He's 48th percentile, outs above average. And last year, he hit 292. Like, the batting average is still there. It's a very empty 292. It was still a 90 OPS plus. So he hit 290 and was still 10% below league average. Elvis Andrus, was better with Oakland than he had been the previous 4 seasons. The 4 seasons before that, it was a 78 OPS plus or worse. So it was tough. But Andrus also stole 18 bags last year in 22 attempts. So if you're saying, like, I hope we get Trevor Story light to the lightest level, like someone who can steal 15 to 20 bags and maybe hit 15 home runs. We haven't even gotten there yet. No, and it's scary. But and play good defense, that's kind of what you're talking about. I I think Duran came up and people ran with that very fast. It was just Cora saying like, well, okay, I can only look at the depth chart here and say, this is the next guy in line. Yeah. I think where the Red Sox are, they want to move off of him too. But at the same time, am I going to be mad if Jarren Duran's getting some reps or in something of a platoon conversation? No, because if it somehow clicks and he's a late bloomer, there's not going to be a single person complaining. Jarren Duran isn't going to make or break the 2023 Red Sox.
No, I think it's more just PTSD. People's most recent memories of Jarren Duran are not great with the fucking inside the park grand slam. The defense was very bad. The blow up in Kansas City. It was a very bad, very forgettable year for Jarren Duran. But I think the number one thing for him, he needs to come up with a plan and stick to it. He changes up all the fucking time. His hands are up, his hands are down, his hands are out, his hands are in. Like he's all over the fucking place. And I get that when you're a player that just got called up and you've spent some time in the minors and you were a top prospect and if you're struggling, you want to do something to correct it immediately, because if you're in the big leagues, you want to stay in the big leagues. You don't, in your mind, you don't have time to struggle. You can't go 2 weeks going 2 for 37. Like that's just not going to cut it, because then it's next guy up. So I get I don't want to call it panic, but the motivation to want to correct things. And when you do that, it's more so the mindset should be like, this worked. I believe in this. So I might struggle a little bit while I'm doing this, but it worked before and it's going to work again. And I'm just going to work. I'm going to work through this versus this worked. Now it doesn't work. How do I change it and do something else? And that has been Jarren Duran, at least from an offensive perspective, from what I've noticed. So yeah, he's just going to find what works, stick through it, even through the slumps, because that's been a whole thing.
And on top of it, it's like you're mentioning just the batting stuff, like defensively, like God help you. There were some really rough moments. And when you have Yoshida in left field and Verdugo most likely in right field, who knows what plays out with trades, like you can't have someone out there who's not even average at the position. And that's a big problem for him. He would have to make major strides in multiple departments. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But, maybe in a world where the clubhouse is a little more welcoming, maybe a little more easier for you to be yourself. Like I still think it gets forgotten a little bit, that Jarren Duran mental health story from the end of last year, where he was talking about like where he was and like how down he felt and some of that stuff. Like, it was dark. That was some dark stuff. And I don't know if he's here and he's in spring training and it's one of those things where it's like, if he has an incredible Jackie Bradley Jr. 2013 spring and he somehow opens the conversation back up, awesome. Would I prefer? I think it's better for both sides to move on, most likely. But we'll see. At this point with the Red Sox, it's about the future. It's not exactly about today or tomorrow or about today. It's about tomorrow. So we'll see. I think talking center field, there's a guy that, I kind of got in the conversation a little bit today, Adam Duvall. Like if you're going to move Kike Hernandez out of center field, you need someone who can play the position out there and not be a problem. He's had elite defensive seasons the last 2 years. He got hurt this past year. He had a sheath injury in his wrist that ended up costing him most of it. But we remember the 3 home run game at Fenway during COVID. Someone who could bring that power, which, I guess we can kind of transition to the story a little bit, but, you don't have 30 home run power in this lineup right now. You just lost that. Devers can give you that, but we can't depend on that from Casas. At least Duvall, you put him at Fenway Park. He may hit 220 with like a 290 OVP, but if you could get plus defense and 30 jacks, it's a kind of part of this lineup they don't have. And I think that's someone you check in. But at the same time, I tell you, like Elvis Andrus is probably going to cost like, 8 to 10 million. The Red Sox right now are at 216 on the payroll. So like that gets you to 226. That's 7 million before you get to 233. They're not going to go over. So, I think that's why you see the Red Sox in this weird spot where, why didn't they sign Elvis Andrus the minute that something happened to Trevor Story? They're trying to figure out how they're going to piece this thing together. And then Miguel Rojas gets traded last night, who, seems to still have wrist problems, not for a small return in Jacob Amaya, but now they're saying Joey Wendell most likely isn't going to get dealt over there. And that seemed to be the guy the Red Sox had the most smoke around the last couple weeks.
Sure. Yeah. The one thing that I don't want next year, and this is the best comparison that I can come up with, is like last year the vibes were obviously off. The team wasn't great. It's almost like we're gonna be Red Sox fans no matter what. We're 162 guys and girls that listen. We're gonna watch these games no matter what. It's very similar to having a kid that sucks at a sport, but you've got to sit in the stands and be like, yay, like you did so good. Like that's what we had to do with the podcast last year for basically almost the whole year, or at least until we knew it was over for real. I would say the first half of the season, we had to be like the supportive parent that has a kid that sucks at sports and still like cheer and like be like, no, like you did good. No, that was good. Like I can't do that again this year. I just can't. I cannot sit in the stands and cheer on my JV senior son that fucking goes 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts and gets hit by a pitch because he can't get out of the way because he doesn't know how. Like I just can't do that. I really can't. So that's the stuff that really gets to me is I miss being genuinely excited. I miss feeling genuine happiness. Like
you miss talking shit.
I miss being able to fucking talk shit to people. People talk shit to me every day online. What can I say? I'm gonna be like, yeah, no, we know it's not great right now. And to continue that, we haven't even talked about Trevor's story yet. And so Trevor's story got Tommy. It's not Tommy John, but it is.
It's called an internal brace surgery on his right elbow.
But it's basically Tommy John.
It's a quicker recovery. Seth Maness was like the first notable player to have it.
4 to 6 months.
And some are saying 6 to 9. It depends. Spear had.
Jesus
I know.
Christ.
So Spear in his article today had 6 to 9, but one of the main doctors from the other article he put out the other day said, if a normal recovery, if everything goes right, no setbacks, he should be back around the All-Star break. But Heimblum said we're not banking on it. So I think it's.
Is this not the same surgery that Bryce Harper had?
No, it's different. Bryce Harper had straight Tommy John.
Bryce Harper fucking could still DH.
And that's what was weird to me. Someone brought that up on Twitter and like a big account. I think they're called Injury Expert or whatever. Was like, Trevor Story, couldn't he DH in a similar way? Doesn't sound like the Red Sox are looking at it that way with him. So I don't know if they're just like, we don't want to push it. We don't see this team as going, we're not trying to win a World Series most likely this year. So let's just let it heal. So the rest of this contract is not a disaster for us. But I don't know. It has a 93 to 95% recovery rate. I saw some people being like, well, why didn't he just get regular Tommy John then? Like, why are we trying this? It's a surgery. It's a recovery. Apparently, instead of replacing the ligament, like, you get something from your ankle or whatever, and you do it that way. This kind of puts in like thigh or whatever it may be. It's a way to support the ligament and kind of add some background. And it's been successful. Ricky Keel had it when he was trying to come back as a pitcher. Mike Trout had it on his thumb recently when he had the UCL tear there. So hopefully it works out. And, if everything goes right, do we see him in July or August? I don't know. I hope that would be a nice boost when the team probably is going to need something to be super excited about. Yeah. But at the same time, if there's one setback and we're in August, do you think the Red Sox are going to force him to come back to play for a month maybe? I think there's a reality where they say, we'll see you in 2024.
You know how sick I am of like Red Sox teams treading water and waiting for player X to come back? Obviously it's mostly been Chris Sale, but like if the Red Sox are hovering around 500 or like a little bit under or barely above it, like talking about, well, when we get Trevor Story back, then we'll really be cooking with gas. Like it would just be nice to start a season with the team as fully intended. Like that. When is the last time that happened? 2018?
Yeah, that's probably the closest thing. It's like when I saw the Story stuff, I was on the highway and I had to pull over because I wanted to get my tweets off and everything.
Yeah. Did you not have the same reaction? Like my reaction was, if why didn't they get the surgery sooner? And then I saw, Lou Merloni had the point about, well, if he's playing in the World Baseball Classic, he's sitting around all off season, and maybe this is the time where he's starting to like ramp it up, and he starts throwing, and then he feels a little something, and it's not right. You go get it checked out. Boom, you need surgery. I get that. Like that logic is sound. However, the elbow, haven't we been talking about this since before he even signed here?
Everyone, Peter Gammons, that tweet was going back around. The Red Sox had concerns. Everybody had concerns. And even if you just want to ignore the reports that were there, we have the numbers. In 2020, his arm strength was 40th percentile, 82.3 miles per hour. 2021, he gets hurt in Colorado, 19th percentile, 79.1 miles per hour average. 2022, 8th percentile, 76.1 miles per hour. So it was clear it was decreasing. Chaim Bloom admitted to that himself. It's just like, all right.
Who had the tweet about like teams backing out of signing him because of the elbow?
That was a real thing because they didn't believe he could play shortstop anymore.
And people were tweeting me being like, bro, why don't you shut the fuck up and listen to the former player about this? I'm like, Lou is probably one of the smartest, if not the smartest baseball guy in the Boston market. Like right up there. I would probably put him number one if you were to ask me to sit down and actually think about it. So his point makes complete sense in a vacuum. If there was no elbow concern or injury, then yeah, if he was sitting around all off season and this wasn't a thing prior to that, then yeah, he's starting to get in throwing shape to play in the World Baseball Classic in March. And then he feels a little something in January, and that process, you get it checked out, and oh fuck, I need surgery. That's going to take 6 to 9 months to recover. But this elbow thing has been an issue since before he even signed with the Red Sox. So I get, it's like you were with the Colorado Rockies, you become a free agent, you're playing out of position because other teams were either like, we don't want you as a shortstop, or maybe they overplayed their hand in free agency and teams pivoted to someone like Corey Seager. And then you end up with this 6-year deal in Boston to become a second baseman. You're not going to sign this big contract with the Red Sox and then be like, oh, by the way, I need surgery that it's going to take 6 to 9 months. Because like that changes everything. Like if the elbow was an issue last winter, you're not going to get that surgery coming off your last season with the Rockies going into free agency, because then you're probably going to miss the entire 2022 season. So no team would sign you. And then what would your market look like coming off of missing an entire year without a contract? So you sign with the Red Sox, you play out the year. It was not an issue, really. I mean, like, because you're playing second base, you don't need the arm strength there that you would at shortstop. Fine.
Chaim even said, like, he wasn't in the, like, with the medical team consistently, like, hey, I need you to take care of this so I can get on the field today. It was not that kind of situation for him in 2022. Right. He was posting when he was healthy. It was other things. So that's where I sit there and I'm like, geez, man, the Red Sox medical team has had a really bad 12 months. Like, whoever is giving these medicals and saying he's going to be fine, like, yikes, man. And, they also misdiagnosed Trevor Story's, hand injury during the summer, which cost him even more time. They were like, hey, dude, your hand's fine. Your wrist is fine. He had a fracture. Dude had a fracture. Like, he was actually hurt. And that happened. We had the Michael Wacha stuff last year where he was, consistently trying to get it together. The Josh Taylor stuff. Like, how many times did we sit here and say, what the fuck is going on with these timetables for these injuries? They make no sense. Matt Strahm was another one when they both went down at the same time. It's just whoever greenlighted those medicals and said he was fine. Yikes, man. Yikes. Because it clearly wasn't fine. And that's when I kind of sit there and say, if there was even an ounce of concern over this when you signed him, shouldn't that have spearheaded your Xander Bogaerts negotiations even more? To say, like, dude, there's a chance. We love Trevor Story. And I think we all said when he signed the deal, hey, if he needs to miss a year because of the elbow, whatever. Like, it's a good deal. You'll take that to get him on this team. You should have been more aggressive in making sure you had someone up the middle you could depend on moving forward. Like, and it's just, there's something there. You can't say, well, This came out of the blue. Okay, I get it. It popped up on you like that, but there's a piece missing here. There were signs, of something being wrong there, and instead you're banking on that and saying, hey, we're okay with him playing shortstop this year. Like, you were banking on something that was clear was getting worse as time went along. That just doesn't seem like a smart bet. And I think you got to look at the medical team partially and say, like, what's going on over there? And I think you got to look at the front office as well and say, you're betting on some of the wrong stuff here. Like, these were some really risky bets, and now you don't have a second baseman or shortstop.
Yeah. You kind of said it. Like, what I was going to say, the pieces don't fit. Like, there are pieces missing from this puzzle, even after the Chaim Bloom press conference, where there needs to be more clarity to how this went down. And I don't think that we'll ever get the full truth. Definitely not publicly. It's going to have to be like, oh, sources like this, and this. But what were the concerns prior to signing Story? What was the injury then? Is this something different? Is it the same injury that got worse? Like, what are we talking about here? Because there was obviously something going on from the get-go. That's not like something that we found out down the line. Like, that was something that was talked about in real time. And it was something that was talked about over the course of the season. And then it was something that was talked about after the season ended. And now we're talking about it because it has come full circle to where he needs surgery, or he already got the surgery, and he will miss 4 to 6, 6 to 9, depends on the fucking doctor that you ask. Who fucking knows? He's going to miss time. And now the Red Sox don't have a shortstop, unless you consider Kike Hernandez to be your shortstop, which he was supposed to be your center fielder. They also don't have a second baseman now because Trevor Story was your second baseman. Then he was your shortstop. Now he's not playing. So you have your entire spine is missing. Because even you could talk about the catching tandem with Connor Wong and fucking Reese Slapstick over there. Like, you could talk about those guys. And it's like, all right, yeah, I watched Reese McGuire last year. I liked what I saw from Reese McGuire last year. But it almost feels like both Connor Wong and Reese McGuire should be the backup to the guy that you don't have. It feels that, and that's not to say that I don't think that Connor Wong can handle a pitching staff. I've asked some of the guys, and they just sing his praises. Like, they like working with him. They like his work ethic. They feel comfortable pitching with him. So maybe he's the guy. But it's like you like Wong behind the plate, and you like the bat for McGuire. I don't know. I haven't really heard much about, guys working with McGuire. Maybe they didn't have enough time to really form an opinion. I don't know. But you've got that. I don't even want to call it a dilemma. You've got that situation behind the plate. You have no second baseman.
It's just one of those things.
I guess you don't have a shortstop, and you have no fucking center fielder.
Yeah, and you look at Reese McGuire and Connor Wong, like, they can handle themselves defensively. We'll see with the bat, but like, you can make bets like that when you're secure in other parts of the roster. Like, you could say, all right, yeah, we're going to kind of take a chance on these guys, and maybe it'll be a little below league average production or whatever, but hey, we're going to be fine in center field, and we're going to be fine up the middle. It's like, no, you're not fine in any of those spots, and that just makes something like that bigger. That doesn't include the starting rotation. That has so many questions on top of it. So it's just like...
Am I crazy for feeling this way? But wouldn't you just keep Kike in center, put Arroyo at second, and sign Elvis Andrus to play short? Isn't that the better alternative? Unless you sign Adam Duvall. I guess it's who's going to cost less between Elvis Andrus and Adam Duvall. Having Duvall, who's a good defender, and maybe he has a bounce back, you need a righty bat. Like, maybe you put Duvall in center and hope for the best, and then you can put Kike at short and figure it out at second base, whether it's Arroyo or otherwise. But I'm very tempted. Like, what combination would you go with in a perfect world with that scenario?
I think they're in a tough spot where it's like, even if you get some of those pieces, it feels like you're lacking in terms of, I don't know if it's something you can depend on. Like, I like Christian Arroyo a lot, but the front office has told us, like, they view him in a utility role. Like, they're scared of him depending on him for 162 games. I think that's a fair concern. It's just like, you only
Why
have...
though? Why?
Why is the front office concerned?
Yeah.
because he hasn't stayed healthy.
But like,
it's been some bad luck. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, this is not a perfect comparison, but it's kind of like when people called Aaron Judge injury prone, and it's like the dude got hit by a pitch and got hurt, and like he dove for a ball and like cracked. It was like bad luck. It wasn't like poor conditioning. With Christian Arroyo, it was he got hit by a pitch twice and he got COVID twice. So it's like, oh, we can't depend on him to play every day. Like, he's not an injury prone guy. Pretty sure he can handle second base, and the offense, I'll take it. You know, I would take his bat over fucking Jose Iglesias' bat. When have you ever watched Christian Arroyo play defense and be like, damn, he's a liability out there? What the fuck was that play? What was that throw? Why didn't you that wasn't a smart or heads up play right there. I've never felt that way about his defense. I'm not saying he's some sort of elite defender at second base, but if you don't really notice the guy, that's a good thing. Like Christian Arroyo's defense at second base, I'll fucking take it. And I think he has a pretty high upside in terms of offense. He's not going to be Trevor Story out there hitting 25 bombs and driving in 90 runs, but I think that he's more than capable. It would more so be, I would feel more comfortable putting Arroyo in a position to say, prove us wrong, than just outright writing him off as a guy that just can't do it because he got hit with a couple pitches and got fucking COVID.
And I think that's where, and let's not forget, he also got fucked when he had to play first base that time. And he went for, he tried to do the splits and he absolutely killed himself during.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. It's like the one moment where you're like, Christian Arroyo, what the fuck? It was when he was playing right field and the dude told you, he's like, I haven't played the outfield since Little League. Like, yeah, like that.
Of course,
I would imagine that. Yeah, that's it. But we're talking specifically second base.
And I think that's why the Red Sox like Joey Wendell. And we knew when they talked about Joey Wendell, it wasn't an everyday role. It was a partial role. So I think they were willing to say, hey, we'll platoon him and Arroyo. And we know Arroyo kills lefties. Like, that's what he's really swung the bat well against. The splits weren't horrendous last year, though, either. And I'd say the other part of it is with Arroyo at the moment, it's like, if you take him out, it's not exactly easy. You need to find someone who can kind of fill that utility role like he can, playing, second or short or third in a pinch. So yeah, if you go and get someone that can fill that role like an Elvis Andrus and go up that way, all right, that's a conversation. It just seems like they want some kind of protection there. And I think that's where you're going to see things happen with Arroyo. They want at least a platoon so that they're not screwed. I think there is one higher upside option here, but it's going to cost you. And I do feel like the Red Sox realize they need to make a splash a little bit.
You're looking at San Diego right now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's San Diego. It's Ha-Seong Kim, where you could say, all right, it's probably going to cost us Tanner Houck, but we're going to get a guy who's not making a lot of money. We can still, fit under the luxury tax without a problem this year.
Tanner Houck and...
Maybe. I saw that report on Twitter. I'm not saying that guy doesn't have sources, but I want to see as other things come out about. I think it'd be Tanner Houck. I can't imagine it'd be much more beyond that. I know they really like him. And if that's the case, then it's another thing. Like, is it worth it to pour all this in for him? Probably not. But you look at Kim and you get him in the right deal. It's elite defense at shortstop. Someone the Red Sox really liked and put a strong bid in before 2021 when he went to San Diego. Still hit above average last year, 107 OPS plus. That puts him right in Christian Arroyo territory. And his power would play way better at Fenway Park. He had 11 home runs at Petco last year. It would have been 18 at Fenway. So like there you get a little bit of that pop you're missing out on. And he doesn't, strike out. He walks and he doesn't whiff a lot, which fits all the profiles of the guys they went after this offseason. So we'll see. But that's the kind of high upside guy you get. And then you say, all right, well, Kim, we think we can get a little bit more out of him. Put him at shortstop. We can keep Kike in center. And then maybe we find a nice platoon option with him or with Arroyo and somebody. It's just, they're in a tough spot. They are in a very tough spot to try and put this roster together at this point. And it just feels like, even if you go like, say you got Kim and you went and got Trent Grisham, right? That's somewhere where you could be like, okay, well, if you went and got Trent Grisham to play center field, that's elite defense. Someone who kind of is a bounce back. You got Kim at short, but then like you're very lefty heavy. You have an extremely lefty heavy lineup at that point. And then you could move Kike to second base and keep Arroyo in a utility role. Or, however you want. Yeah, Kike would play second if you got Kim, because Kim's a better defender.
Yeah. I mean,
and Trent Grisham's elite in center field. It's hard. Like, you realize how many different pieces here. I don't think they love Alex Verdugo in right field either, but like they can't get a deal done. Like they're sitting here trying to make deals for over a month and there's nothing. I don't know if the Red Sox are like hoping teams like cave. Like but like you're getting into a scary spot where you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And it's like every girl's leaving the bar. You might get left at the bar and there's nobody left. So I think that's the game they're playing. It's kind of chicken. Who can we get someone to blink on a trade first? Or are we going to go out there and say, screw it, we'll give $10 million to Elvis Andrus and go that way just so we can be safe?
You really think he's going to cost $10 million?
Corey Kluber got $10 million. Like what? $6 million? $7 million? What would you put Elvis Andrus at?
I mean, the fact that he's still out there and they're playing musical chairs right now with jobs. I don't know that he has a ton of leverage. That's the thing. Like I don't know that they've called on Elvis Andrus. I would imagine that they've called on everyone. Like you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't call on Elvis Andrus.
John Heyman had a report today saying that he's been one of the names they discussed, him and Josh Harrison.
Okay. So if you're his agent, you're saying you guys are fucking desperate. Like we can probably get a little bit more cash out of the Red Sox because they're in a pinch. And then if you're the Red Sox, you can say, well, we're trying to stay under the luxury tax. Yeah, we like the player, but there's other options. We could go with Iglesias. We could go here. We could put Kike there. Like we don't necessarily need Elvis. And we know that it's almost fucking time to report. You got a month until pitchers and catchers report. You probably want a job, don't you? And there's not many teams right now that are looking to do that because you're still out here. So it's probably a little cat and mouse game with those two. And I'm sure the Red Sox, I wouldn't say they're fine with it, but they can go in another direction. They don't need Elvis Andrus. It would be nice. It would help. You'd be a better team. But does signing him make or break your offseason or your club for next year? No.
You're just trying to keep, just fill the hole without it being a disaster.
You're literally just trying to put a fucking team on the field.
Like last year, Jared, Iglesias was 1 year, $5 million. And he wasn't coming off the season that Elvis Andrus was. I think 10's probably a little strong. Let's call it 7 or 8, right?
7.5.
I'd be interested in that.
1 for 7.5.
And that would leave you $10 million. About $10 million in terms of what you can spend for the rest of the offseason. I think the Red Sox have shown they're probably not going to go get another lefty. I know some people were like, go get Andrew Chafin and just fuck it. We'll have the best bullpen ever. They kind of re-upped with Josh Taylor today. That doesn't seem like the route they're going to go. They need 2 pieces, probably 1 through trade and 1 through signing. And you're going to have to probably take salary when whoever you trade for here. They're at least going to be worth something.
Mm. Unless you're trading major league talent in the deal.
Alex Verdugo. Tanner Houck's not making much, but
no, he's not.
So that's the other half of it. It's like Nick Pivetta. Nick Pivetta he's going to do arbitration tomorrow. Let's see how much that's going to end up being.
What's he projected?
Let me pull it up. It's not anything crazy. I want to say it's like $5 million.
Speaking of Nick Pivetta, the Nick Pivetta trade also brought.
Oh my God.
Connor Seabold.
Nope.
To Boston. And I love Tony.
Is this the Mavs tweet?
And I love Tony.
Please bring this up.
And I love Tony. We send our best wishes to Tony, my co-host on the Baseball Hour, 98.5 The Sports Hub, every Wednesday during the season. I don't know if it's going to be Wednesday this year, but I fully intend on being back. Tony had a tweet calling the Connor Seabold trade a dud because he was designated for assignment to make room on the 40-man roster for the Corey Kluber signing going official, which was today. Tony. Well, so I also saw this. I saw fans were arguing with each other on Twitter, as Red Sox fans are known to do these days. They just eat each other alive now. That Connor Seabold was the centerpiece of that trade, not Nick Pivetta.
I'd agree with that.
You would?
Yeah, Connor Siebold, that was the main chip at that time. You were getting a starting pitching prospect that had promise. Nick Pivetta was kind of like your reclamation project.
See, I didn't really view it that way at the time because
I don't think that changes the outlook of the deal. Like Nick Pivetta turned into a really good 5-starter, but I think when they made that trade, we were sitting here. We weren't saying, hey, Nick Pivetta is going to be in our rotation, hopefully. Like when he came back and made a couple starts, we were like, let's see if he can be worth something. But it was, I think Heim found something in Connor Siebold, and he got a lot of praise for that deal when it happened because it looked like Siebold's stuff had kind of ticked up. We saw at the ATS, like his velocity was up to like 95, 96. And it was like, whoa, all right, the Red Sox might have got a starting pitcher here. Elbow injuries killed him in 2021 and it never bounced back. But I don't think that changes the outlook of the deal. Nick Pivetta has been a serviceable number 5 starter for 2 seasons in a row and delivered the clutchest postseason performance outside of Nate Eovaldi.
Thank you. I was literally about to say, this take may be too strong, but if the Red Sox went on to win the World Series in 2021, the role of Nathan Eovaldi was played by Nick Pivetta in that postseason. It just was. He was outstanding. Coming out of the bullpen in extra innings, nuts on the table. I'm not going to sit here and say that Nick Pivetta is the same regular season pitcher that Nathan Eovaldi has been in Boston. That would be just completely inaccurate. Not true. But in the playoffs, like that man, if that team goes all the way in 21, Nick Pivetta, the legend of Nick Pivetta is told in a completely different light than it is currently because they did not win a championship that year. So I'm not going to call that trade a bust because Connor Siebold got designated for assignment. And maybe I'm too optimistic here. Is this going to be a situation where a team claims him?
Darwin's and Hernandez style. I wouldn't be surprised. I thought Ian Kundle and Chris Hatfield, like they both said in their most recent podcast, they thought you'd be able to get something there. But we'll see. Like Darwin's and Hernandez got DFA'd and they got cash considerations.
Woo!
Just get something of worth. It's Connor Siebold. Did I believe at this point he was going to give anything to this roster? Fuck no. Watching him pitch last year, like I'm owed money for having to watch that. That Baltimore Orioles start, whoa. That was one of the most
Toronto Blue Jays start.
Both of those were some of the most disgusting like pitching I've ever seen at the big league level where, besides Siebold's changeup, which was good, everything else was absolute trash.
It's not even that it was bad. It was that he was getting teed off on.
And he was sulking out there visibly,
throwing
his hands down.
All the data will tell you that Connor Siebold got absolutely fucking barreled when he was pitching big league innings.
Which was even more like kind of frustrating and confusing because we were looking at him in AAA and he was dicing people up. Like he put together another really good campaign at AAA, but he feels like the definition of a quadruple A arm. Yeah. And that's what he is. It is what it is. People
the Red Sox
act like you
so
were going to get
fucking 4A players. Oh my God.
A lot.
Franchi was a 4A guy. Where is he now? Baltimore?
Yep. Josh Winkowski feels like a quadruple A
4A,
guy.
Caleb Ort 4A.
Duran.
Fucking Duran's 4A. Bob's 4A. And that pains me to say because I love Bob. Darwinson was 4A.
4A.
They had a fucking all-star team with the Woo Sox. And then when some of those guys got up here, it was like, where did all that go? And I'll defend Bob until the day I die. I think if they were to trade him right now to any other organization that gave him a chance to play every single day, I still think that Bob is going to become a very serviceable to quite good, even Major League Baseball player. But I don't know that happens here now.
They're trying to trade him, man. They are doing everything possible to try to move him. We know that. It's just like I don't want to let Matt. I don't know if they're going to get a deal done, but we know they're floating him. We know the Rays were interested. They're trying these different conversations. It's just you got to get someone to bite. It feels like the Red Sox have a lot of pieces that they're like, please, someone take this, and they can't get anyone to take it. And that's why there's been some frustration over the Thad Ward stuff in the Rule 5 draft. The Thad Ward stuff in the Rule 5 draft.
So there's been some what?
What'd I say? Frustration?
So you said frustration.
No, I didn't. You misheard.
Jake, what do you say?
Jake, no.
He said frustration.
Fuck
yeah,
off.
he did.
Fuck you guys.
Yeah, he did.
Well, while I'm here, I'm not letting Maz off the hook. Just
All right.
if you want to look at pure worth, Hembree and Workman absolutely blew once they got to the Phillies. It was minus 1.9 WAR. Pivetta and Seabold, as bad as Seabold was, is 3.6 WAR and counting. It's not even a conversation. That was a fleece. Like, Bloom, say what you want about the other trades. That was a fleece job. You got a controllable starter for 2 relievers who were done. Already cooked. On a team, the 2020 Red Sox, that were more than cooked. Horrendous take. That is the most like, you're just trying to get a hot take to crap on the Red Sox, which, trust me, there's plenty of things that you can actually crap on. Just find one that's a legitimate reason, please. That's all I ask.
Yeah, that was a bad take by Maz.
Horrendous. But
I'm actually I'm genuinely upset that Maz won't be on the Nesson broadcast.
It's interesting. And for people who didn't see the news, Maz wanted to come back. He had asked to come back, and I guess for whatever reason they chose not to. It just seemed like, and I think anybody who knows Maz and has talked, like the Maz you get on Felger and Maz and even the baseball hour is a different Maz. Like Maz has done his part in this industry. He was a journalist for all those years. Like when he was in the booth, it was a different guy. Like you could really hear it compared to the Felger and Maz personality. He wasn't Tony Maz in the Red Sox booth. He was Tony Maserati. And you heard all the stories and all these different things. But some people couldn't separate it. That's how some people are. But I thought Maz did offer a different flavor in there that they lacked. I don't think anyone was sitting there saying, Maz should be, the primary color analyst like Yuke's going to be moving forward, or at least for this year. But he was a flavor in that booth that was different. And I didn't see him as overly critical, even in the booth either. I didn't think he was on there just railing on guys. I just think it was hard for some people to separate the personalities.
It's not even that he was criticizing players. It's just that he had opinions. And I don't know that that's what they want up there.
They don't.
Yeah, it's almost, they love former players. Maz is not a former player. I think Will Middlebrooks is great, especially in studio. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I think he does a great job in studio. I want to see that same Will that he was in studio on the broadcast, but I don't know like to what you're talking about with Tony. It's like it's a different Maz on Felger and Maz than it is on Baseball Hour, that it is on the broadcast. Like with Will, I'm hoping that we get the same Will Middlebrooks in the booth that we got in the studio. And then Uke was great. Like I loved Uke up there. And then with Tony, what I loved about what he brought to the table was that it was almost like a talk show during the game. And I feel like Nesson does not want that. Nesson's just like, the game's happening, talk about the game. Whereas Tony would be asking like thought-provoking questions, and he would even like say stuff to Dave that Dave wouldn't even acknowledge. He would just like make an observation. Well, either it was a question or it was like an observation that he wanted Dave to comment on, and then Dave would just be like, all right, the 2-2. So it's not for a lack of effort. And that's, as a fan, like stuff like that is what I want. And like Millar too. I forgot Millar because he doesn't want to do like a full season or anything like that. But Millar has like the stories. I think Will has an interesting analytical former player blend. Euclid has a lot of like the stories, but he also has a great eye for baseball, which is something that Jerry Remy was fantastic at. Like Jerry Remy could tell you shit that was going to happen like right before it happened. Like that was one of the things that, I'll miss most about Jerry in the booth. But with Maz, I like we're all watching the game here. It's cool when you can have a former player point out things that maybe, as a fan, you might not have noted. Like, well, what is he doing here? Like there's subtle intricacies of the game within the game that former players can point out that maybe someone like Maz can't. But when something happens in the baseball world, I think it's interesting when it's being discussed and opinions are being given on the broadcast. Like we're all here watching the game anyway. Let's have an interesting conversation while we're all here for the next 4 fucking hours. So it's everyone brought something different to the table, but what Maz brought was also something that I enjoyed.
I think you put it perfectly. It's just not Nesson wants guys in there, and I think this is what Uke was so good at, was you could make people laugh, but it was never going to be, from a super critical standpoint. It's kind of a homer perspective, and that's what a home broadcast like Nesson typically is. And Kevin Youkilis, listen, he was learning on the go, and I think for someone learning on the go, you got to give that guy a ton of credit. But the rally bandana, when he pulled that off early in the season, dude, we were all hyped during that. We were all posting it. During a tough time in the season, he was able to find it. And when you can walk that line of analysis and being fun, that's not something most guys can do. It's usually one or the other. I think Will Middlebrooks, we only got one game with him, and now he's going to be doing somewhere between 10 to 20% of games. But don't forget that Eck conversation at the end of the year, I thought was the best moment of the entire season from that broadcast booth. And I think there was a reason Eck talked to Will like he did. It was clear that, hey, I see something in you. I know this is your first time really up here, but this is what it is. And this is kind of you in the game. And, from Will, and he talked about it when he was on this podcast, the perspective to understand, or just, to realize hey, I know what I was as a player. I know I wasn't on the same level of a David Ortiz or whatever it may be, but I'm going to use that to my advantage and kind of be the typical MLB player who was in it for a couple of years and an injury ended my career. I can give you that perspective, and I'm not going to try to be Mr. Rah-Rah or somebody else. I think he's great at that. I think Uke and Middlebrooks, those are the two guys that Nesson should really build around. And we've talked about it. Uke's going to do half the games this year. I'd be surprised if he ever takes on a significant role beyond that. I think Will is someone who would be willing to take on an even bigger role than that. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. Kevin Millar, good in burst, talks a lot, seemed very nervous in the booth at times, but I enjoy the stories. Tim Wakefield, I'm happy we're going to get a little bit more of. Not acting like he's the most old. Yeah, not acting like he's Millar level energy, but there were a lot of cool stories there from him when he filled in. So, yeah, I think just Maz isn't, for a network like Nesson who wants more of that homer perspective, Maz isn't typically going to give you that. And it's a different thing. And I know the fan feedback, I don't want to act like I don't see it on Twitter. There were a lot of people that were very hard on Maz or kind of crapping on him or whatever it may be. But some of those stories he tells, that is a guy who's been in this game for a very long time. And he truly, you have a conversation off the air where Maz, people think he's some jerk or whatever it may be. He is a really good guy. He's a guy who truly loves the sport of baseball. I don't agree with the fucking thing he says half the time. More than that, 75% of the time. But, he truly cares about the game and has some great tales to it. It's just, sometimes you're not what Nesson wants. And he felt like he was treated like a placeholder. And I do agree. I think that's what this past year was. They were trying different guys to figure out who to move forward with. And this list is who they want to move forward with.
I am curious because I know Will lives in Florida and Uke lives in California, right?
Yep.
How the fuck are they going to do all these games? Tim Wakefield still lives around here, but Uke don't live around here and Will don't live around here. How are they going to do all these games?
It's a good question. So Uke did 50 games last year, I believe, total. So this is a 30-game increase. I don't know exactly whether he was living in hotels or renting something out or what, but he seems to be pretty excited to be doing it again. That's what he said at the end of the year in the booth. He was I hope they have me back. And they didn't commit to any of these guys at the end of the year. We know that. But I don't know. It seems like Uke wants to stick around. And whatever capacity that is, I think that's good for the Red Sox.
Jake, what do you think?
I think it's good. I honestly would like to see more Mike Monaco too.
Yes. Preach.
There were some games in late September that he was calling that literally felt like we were a game back of the Yankees or something heading into October. So yeah,
the Connor Wong first home run.
Yeah, that was exactly what came to my mind.
Yeah.
And I know I post about this stuff on Twitter, and people are like, "What about Dave O'Brien?" It's nothing personal. I just think he's more of a national voice than a local voice. And in my opinion, Mike Monaco brings the young energy, especially for a team like I don't look forward to a year where the Red Sox are probably not going to be contending at the top of the division with Dave O'Brien calling the games. Because like it takes a lot for him to kind of get his heartbeat going. It's, he's talking about the weather and, kind of hoping for the rain delay and kind of dragging along. He's not afraid to let you know it's like, this has been a long season to get through here, guys. Like, I wouldn't mind a little of young Mike Monaco with the young team kind of bringing a whole youth movement together. Now, Nesson's not going to do that. I think he's under contract for at least a couple more years, Dave O'Brien. So hopefully Monaco doesn't get snatched up before then.
Yeah, I think everyone loves Mike Monaco because they want that injection of excitement and energy. And, I've said it before. I think Dave is an outstanding neutral broadcaster. I think the Red Sox broadcast, people love the homerism, and that was Remy. Like Remy would literally openly root for the Red Sox. And Don, who grew up here, he was calling the Paw Sox games. So I don't know. We'll see. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be an interesting mix. I don't know if they have anyone else up their sleeve for the Nesson broadcast. But yeah, it's just we were spoiled for such a long time with Remy because we're not going to have that former player that does 162 or whatever Remy did. 100 and fucking felt like 158. Like if he didn't do 162, it was pretty damn close. I think Lou is perfect for that job. I don't know. Like, did you see anything about that? Like, what was going on there? Like, how was he a finalist and didn't get it? Did he not want it? Like, I don't know. It's such a no-brainer. I don't know how he's not up there.
Yeah, so I remember a year ago there was conversations and it never came to fruition. But it seems like this year he's transitioned off his radio show. Obviously, he looks like he's just going to be doing radio on that side, and that's kind of what it is. Feels like everyone's like, you should go to Lou, but it hasn't happened. I wonder if it's something that will happen in time, but yeah, I think you get Lou up in there and you get him up there. He's probably not coming down. I'll just put it like that. I think he's someone that has that, homer side, former player like Remy, obviously, but also like there's not really anybody else in this market that gets the game modern wise and can kind of attach that to the old school way and the player perspective all in one. He's that.
Yeah. Lou and Monaco would be the dream team.
It seems so like you could have that, and it looks like they want to do a lot more 3-man booths. So like that's where like Uke and Middlebrooks and all these different guys. It seems like it's so simple to go to Lou, but for whatever reason they haven't been able to get a deal done. I feel like he'd be all for it too. Like he's never seemed to turn away from that. If anything, like the big thing for him was, yeah, I think I'm going to step away from radio. There was contract stuff, obviously. But, he wants to spend more time with his kid, do that, be a dad, all that stuff. Feels like a pretty good way, but maybe they want him for a larger role and he's not willing to commit to the 80 games that Kevin Youkilis is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jared, I know you have a relationship with him. I don't.
Who? I have a relationship with everyone we just talked about.
True. I don't have any kind of relationship with Lou. So
I know that like Lou, like his kid is playing baseball now and he wants to be there to watch his son play baseball, and that stuff's important, and traveling, I'm sure, is a pain in the balls and gets in the way of that. So I don't know, but I just know that Lou lives and breathes baseball, specifically Red Sox baseball. So it just seems like destiny that if he doesn't have that job now, that he will at some point. But I don't know. I just selfishly, I want him in there as soon as possible. But family comes first, and you want to see your kid play and be there. And I know that it meant a lot to me. I know I never played professionally. I didn't play D1 college or anything like that, but it meant a lot to me when my dad could be there at games. So my mom never missed a fucking game. Like that was special to me. So for Lou to recognize that about his own kid, that stuff matters, and that who gives a fuck if we want him in the booth. But when the day comes that he's ready to do that,
so
the booth will be much better because of it.
Yeah. So the report I just read, he's going to do at least 60 games this year for radio.
Okay. I don't know how many.
I would take that. Road. Yeah, I would take that on Nesson. 60 games sounds pretty great, but I think Lou. It seems like Lou has history in this. Like he's done radio and he's really good at it. I think everybody knows he's really good at it as well. It's not going to be cheap. You're gonna have to fit the price tag, and we know Nesson at times with price tags. They'd rather take a chance on maybe some of the unproven guys like Kevin Youkilis, Will Middlebrooks, and say, hey, maybe we'll hit gold when you kind of might have someone who's already established and can get the job done. But you got to pay.
Got to pay. Emptying the bench real quick. I was at the Bronson Arroyo concert last night, which was fantastic. New album comes out in February. Exchange numbers. So we'll get him on the podcast when it comes closer to album drop time. But we were filming a new episode for Like a Pro on Nesson 360. And what's today? Thursday. So on Tuesday, I went to the Paradise Rock Club, where him and his band were rehearsing the songs, and I brought my bass with me, and he taught me the whole time. Nesson was pitching me the idea of the show is you do something with a current former player or whatever, and you do the thing that they like to do. And I was like, well, I play bass, and we were originally gonna go do something with Bobby Dahlbeck. We were going to do he plays guitar, I play bass, and we go to Guitar Center on Boylston or something like that. And then we play a song together. But he just, he was fucking busy. It was baseball season. So we pivoted. Later on, the opportunity comes up. Bronson Arroyo is playing a concert in Boston. We're like, oh, perfect. And with Bob, I was like, I can play songs that either I already know how to play or songs that I know in my head, I've heard them before, so it's easier to pick up because I've heard them before. And they're like, all right, we're gonna have Bronson teach you one of his songs. I was like, well, I've never heard any of his songs because the album's not out yet. So I was like, this might be very difficult. I show up, meet Bronson for the first time, and he just we talked about the different notes. And so he was playing his new song, but as he was switching chords, he would just say the note out loud while he was singing. So he would sing, play the guitar, and then he'd be like, da, 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 A, C. And I just went with that. And within somewhere between 5 to 7 minutes was playing one of Bronson Arroyo's songs with him. That was pretty fucking cool. And that turned into once we finished that, then we did a 40-minute interview. So I'm going to ask, because these Nesson 360 shows that we're doing, they're 10 to 15 minute episodes, but some of the interviews that I'm doing with these guys, the one that I did with Arroyo was literally 40 minutes. I want to ask for the raw audio to put on the podcast because we can't use all of it on the show. And the interview was fucking great. We were most of it wasn't even about baseball. I was kind of taking things from they were baseball / music questions. I was like, you've pitched in Game 6 of the ALCS against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. How does that compare to going on the stage and playing in front of 15,000 people? And he had some really cool answers. I think, if you're a rock fan, that you would really, if you're a Red Sox fan that appreciates good music, that you would appreciate that whole interview. So I'll wait until that episode comes out. I don't know when it's dropping, but after it drops, I might ask for just the audio from that interview and run it on the podcast.
No, that would be incredible. I remember, obviously, I wasn't really old enough during the Bronson Arroyo age to appreciate it, but he released a cover album back in 2005, right? Wasn't that it where he covered a bunch of songs and just put it out?
Before that, he was recording and performing cover songs, and he still did some cover songs at the concert, but most of it, this was the first time he had ever recorded and wrote original music. And then last night was the first time that he had ever like performed his new songs in front of like an actual audience.
Now, I don't want to crap on Bronson or anything, but when you were sitting there and listening, were you like, I'm listening to a baseball player cosplay as an artist, or did it feel like you were actually in the presence of an artist?
I felt like, well, because so his band is also really, they're a 5-piece band. One of the guitarists is Miley Cyrus's guitarist. So it's not like he had like some like slapdicks up there. There was another guy from LA. Like you could tell that his
Industry
guitarists, yeah, like they're legit. They're not like, oh, some buddies from high school and we came up with this like garage band that like they sounded legit. So I mean, and Bronson's got a good voice. I mean, like he's got some Pearl Jam influence in there, and he can play guitar as well. So yeah, I would say like if you're into that, like Tom Petty, but like Pearl Jam, they sounded really good. And I'm not blowing smoke up his ass. Like it genuinely sounded good.
Now, for the people that were there, was it just like you could buy tickets, or was it like a private thing where he invited a bunch of people from like, the media and stuff like that? Or was it just like, hey, you can come through and see Bronson Arroyo, what Bronson Arroyo is doing in the year 2023?
No, he sold tickets.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a ticketed concert at a bar in Somerville. And I went there, went to the show.
Were you drunk, Jared?
No, I was drinking coffee. Did you not see that on
I
Instagram?
couldn't tell. I saw it. I looked at it, and you had this like smirk on your face, but I didn't know if it was just being in the presence of a Bronson Arroyo or if you had
Molly Burkhart of MLB.com took a video of me at the concert making fun of me because I was drinking a Starbucks coffee at like 9:30 at night at a concert. And that was the craziest thing was after the concert was over, we were just standing there, everyone was talking, and in walks this dude wearing a John Deere hoodie and an Oakland A's hat, and he goes up to Bronson and just bear hugs him from behind. And then one of the guys that he was with took out his phone and was taking a picture of it. And I look over and I out loud could not control. I was like, is that fucking Julian Tavares? And the dude taking the picture was like, yeah,
What?
it is. He heard, I said it so loud that the dude taking the picture heard me. He was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, what the fuck? And so then he's like, Julian is catching up with Arroyo. And 10 minutes later, the dude that was taking the picture, he like walks up to me. He's like, how the fuck did you know that was Julian Tavares? I was like, I'm a Red Sox guy. He's like, are you friends with Bronson? I was like, I just met him yesterday. He's like, yeah, come meet Julian. I was like, all right. He fucking brings me up to Julian Tavares. We're just like shooting the shit. And so this is humble brag. This story is in my book that I wrote that came out in 2009. I went to spring training in 2008, and Bobby Kelty took me and my friends out to lunch one day after a Red Sox spring training game. And he's telling me all these stories about Julian Tavares. And I was like, so you're fucking crazy. Like, I was like, do you remember Bobby Kelty? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, he was telling me all these stories about how fucking nuts you are. He's like, oh yeah, no, this is probably all true. I was like, okay. And so then he goes to leave, and like, I mean, I had like a brief conversation with him, shook his hand, we took a picture, I tweeted it, and then I walked away. And then as he was leaving, he comes back up to me, and he's like, take your phone out. And I was like, okay. He's like, take down my number.
Wow.
I was like, all right. So he's like, here's my number. And I mean, we got to have him on the podcast now to go through some of these stories. But yeah, he gave me his number. Off he went.
I'm in shock.
Julian Tavares.
I number one, Julian Tavares is just hanging around in the Boston area. Like, is that what was he just visiting here?
I asked him, I was like, where do you even live? And he's like, Cleveland.
Oh,
I was like, what the fuck? Why do you live, of all the places in the world that you could choose to live, why do you live in Cleveland, Ohio? And that's where he lives. He lives in Cleveland.
I don't know. I don't know what I expected Julian Tavares to be doing, but I thought it'd be something crazy. Like, not serial killer, but, taking lives in some way. And this is where he's just a normal person in Cleveland, Ohio.
I guess so, yeah.
Wow. Maybe he settled down. Maybe it's just like, as you get older, you're not the same.
I don't think so.
No, he still felt like a menace to you, a guy who would roll a ball to first base.
Yeah, I think it was, there's definitely that same like Julian Tavares energy that you would see in the Red Sox dugout. That was still very prominent in his spirit even today.
So the first question I think I would ask him, I want to know about the heading incident. That's the only, like, when I think of Julian Tavares, that's the first thing that always comes to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. He, apparently we'll get the chance to ask him on the podcast because I have his number now. I texted him. He's got my name. He's got my number. I've got his number. We'll have to get something going here.
I think that would be one of the most underrated Red Sox interviews ever. No one else is getting Julian Tavares. Nobody.
No. Like he could have a social media. I'm not aware of it. If it does exist, I haven't seen it. But I have not seen him probably since the 2005 Red Sox season.
Has anybody?
No, it's not like he, like fucking Fenway Park pregame ceremony. We welcome back number 51. You know him, Julian Tavares. Julian Tavares Day at Fenway Park. Julian Tavares bobblehead day. We just haven't gotten there yet. We haven't had those things. So, yeah, I guess we can get him on the podcast and find out like what the fuck's been up, dude. Where you been?
The only person
in Cleveland.
The only like randomness or kind of craziness and weirdness I'd put on the same scale as him is Alfredo Aceves. That's the only other guy that would come to my mind that I looked at and I was scared a little bit, but also very intrigued. I don't know. I would have never expected you to run into Julian Tavares in the year 2023. I assumed he was off living on his own island in a different world, not amongst people.
When I tell you that I was stunned, I mean, it was almost like when you're a kid and there's like the be back in 15 minutes on the throne that Santa Claus sits on at the mall. And then he finally comes back from taking a shit and you're just like, oh, Santa! Like at least there you're expecting Santa. Under no circumstances was I expecting Julian Tavares to walk into this bar in Somerville and walk right past me in our Lord's year of 2023. I just was not expecting that. But what a treat. What a treat that was.
I'd be way more excited to see Julian Tavares than Santa. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, he basically is Santa. There's a very mythical vibe to him showing up at that bar. But yeah, we exchanged info with Bronson Arroyo. I will try to get that audio to play on the podcast, whatever we don't use on the Like a Pro episode, which I believe we're filming another episode at Winter Weekend.
You're going to be there one day, right?
Yeah, I come in, I'm there Friday night, and then I'm filming Saturday, and then I think I'm leaving Saturday night. I usually will stay both nights, but
I'm very curious as to what the temperature will be there. I want to see how the fans are feeling.
I think the crowd is going to go mild.
In terms of like being angry, like they'll just be more accepting,
more
enjoying it, or do you think there's going to be? That's depressing.
Because I feel like some fans will be in a good mood because if the players are there, it's like, how can you not be excited? Like Chris Sale just walked by, woo! But I mean, the venue stinks. It's just not like they did it there once, and I don't know. I didn't have the best time. I think the only thing I really remember from that weekend is there was a Conor McGregor fight, and everyone congregated in like the one bar that had TVs in it to watch the Conor McGregor fight. So like the one thing that I remember had nothing to do with the Red Sox. That was also the weekend that I met Heim for the first time. One day when one day when we get Heim back on the podcast, I would love to tell the story of the time that I met Heim Bloom for the first time. It was crazy.
Awkward, or was it just like, did he know who you were when he saw you?
So it was. I'll save that story.
Okay.
I'll save that story because it deserves to be told, but I want to tell the story with Heim there so that we can recount or recall both of our memories of the experience.
Deep down, I always hope, and Jay Stu told me that Heim knew who I was after 2021 when I was like, on air and going off about it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope if I ran into Heim, he doesn't have to know my name, but he'd be like, that guy on the radio, that guy from the radio. That would be my hope, just to be recognized.
Yeah.
Fist bump. Wow.
You got to come to more games with me, and then I'll introduce you guys.
Hey, listen, 2023, I'm a different person. Fit, social, cool, collected.
Are you going to start working out at my house?
Yes, I want to go to the Carrabis compound. I've been at the gym almost every day the last 2 weeks.
I've been to the gym 0 times in the last 2 months. So you're outworking me in 2023. You can come to the compound. I'm actually right now we're still working on the bedroom, but I've been looking at a lot of podcast equipment stuff, like things that I want to do in the studio. I've been running it by Jake to make sure that it's podcast acceptable. And I think the studio here is going to be pretty fucking sick. So it's up to you. It's up to you if you want to get in the mix.
I will be visiting. I will be there. Are you doing live streams this year?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be around.
Did I tell you what I bought for the media room? Like the room that has the 9 TVs in it? Did I tell you what I bought to decorate it?
No. What? Or this isn't another huge figurine, is it?
No, it's not. No,
okay.
it's probably going to be I will say this. There are a lot of cool features about this house. That's going to be the coolest.
Jesus. Red Sox related?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a life-size Red Sox player?
No,
just sit.
Cool. That'd be weird.
I don't think so. It depends who it is.
Jake, did I tell you what it is?
I feel like you might have mentioned it, but I don't want to blow it.
Damn, how's it feel to be on the outside, Tyler?
It's awful, but it's cool. Whatever. All right. I know you and Jake have a special connection, so it is what it is.
We do have a special connection.
Just, I wish I was special. You're supposed to say something comforting there.
No, yeah, you're special to me.
Fuck off.
You're very special to me.
Fuck it off. Nope. Jake, you're special to me.
Thanks, Tyler.
Nothing you want to say back to me?
I'm good for right now.
Yeah, he's good for right now.
Fuck you guys.
Did we miss anything?
No, I don't think we did.
We got Correa, we got Story, we got Kluber, we got Seabold.
We didn't really.
Tavares.
The Devers presser. I felt like we were hitting like some of the comments. We hit what Werner said with the minor league stuff. Sam Kennedy almost dying and Rafael Devers catching him. Arguably one of the greatest Boston sports moments of all time.
I forgot to give him shit for that.
Imagine if Sam Kennedy actually hit the ground there.
Imagine if he fell and injured Devers. Imagine he fucking fell and bent his knee the wrong way.
Don't say that. Oh, I don't know what would have happened.
That would have. Oh my God! Imagine he accidentally bumps into him and tears his ACL.
Devers goes over the table.
Yeah.
I think I don't know what I'd do. Sam, you think people are angry now? I think we'd be outside Fenway right now. We'd all be outside Fenway.
You'd have to feel for Sam.
Oh no. If he takes out Devers, I'm not feeling shit. I got no sympathy. If he took out Devers, you're not having any sympathy for Sam Kennedy.
I would feel bad because I feel like everyone would come after Sam for an embarrassing moment that obviously had no malicious intent. Yeah, we're gonna give you $331 million and then like tear your ACL.
When you'd be looking, when you'd be trying to figure out shortstop, second base, and third base, that would be the last straw.
Yeah, you'd have to forfeit.
Run it back, Will Middlebrooks.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Could do worse.
Jake's takes.
Quick shout out to Pat. We're planning on recording at 4 p.m. and he texted us at 5:33 saying, "Can't make it tonight, guys." So appreciate that.
All right. I don't mean to pick on Pat, but do we remember the last time Pat was on? Wasn't December.
It was definitely pre-Xander leaving.
I'm pretty sure it was the last time we did Mr. Milliken. The first and last time, actually.
Feels like a long time ago.
Well, he left in the middle of it, so he basically killed my segment. Shout out to all the people who miss it, though. I do appreciate that. A lot of people.
It's going to come back.
One day.
Next week.
Okay. I can
Milliken,
educate some
next week.
people. Oh, best wishes to Pete. He's very ill.
He's the illest. I love Pete.
Not like that. Sick.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking sick.
I'm done with you.
All right. We'll talk next week. Same time, same place.
I guess.
Okay. Bye.
Buenas noches, amigos.